The following case study details an anomaly documented in a 1997 Ohio police evidence file. Viewer discretion is advised, especially if you are watching this late at night. To understand why magnetic tape is so unsettling, we have to look at the mechanics of analog recording. As VHS tape degrades over time, the loss of data creates intense visual noise and heavily distorted audio. When we stare at that random noise, our brains rely on something called pareidolia. This is the natural psychological tendency to force familiar patterns, like human faces, out of completely random visual data. But the case file we are opening today asks a very specific question. What happens when a pattern embedded in the static uses this psychological vulnerability to hunt the viewer? The incident known as the sleep experiment details a series of events that blur the line between a subliminal auditory hallucination and a physical threat. According to the report, the file was eventually categorized as a documented hazard rather than a simple recording. The chain of custody begins in October 1997, outside Cleveland, Ohio. A 21-year-old film student named Daniel Mercer was hunting for old media at a neighborhood garage sale. Inside a dusty cardboard box, he found a single, unmarked black cassette. The tape had a stark white label. Written across it in shaky marker were the words "Sleep Experiment, Final Recording." Beneath that was a very specific instruction: do not play after 1:13 a.m. When the woman running the sale saw Daniel holding it, her smile dropped completely. She told him to put it back. When he laughed it off, she grabbed his wrist aggressively, digging her nails deep into his skin, and warned him that if he heard knocking from inside the television, he shouldn't answer it. This chart maps a standard human sleep cycle across a typical night. Notice how the body descends from light rest into deep restorative cycles. Historically, the period between midnight and 3 a.m. is known in folklore as the witching hour, but the 1:13 a.m. timestamp targets a documented biological vulnerability. If a person falls asleep around normal hours, 1:13 a.m. aligns perfectly with the deepest valley of REM sleep on this graph. This is the exact moment the human brain is paralyzed, processing dreams, and completely susceptible to external subliminal influence. Daniel bought the tape for 50 cents. By bringing it home, he placed the medium in the one environment where it could be tested against that biological clock. Later that night, Daniel and his roommate Tyler put the cassette into their VCR. The playback showed a dim hospital room stamped March 12, 1989. For almost 3 full minutes, 3 patients sitting in beds stared silently and unblinkingly straight into the camera. Then the timestamp hit 1:13 a.m. The screen flickered violently to the sound of a loud, buzzing frequency. In perfect synchronization, all 3 patients smiled and began whispering distorted warnings into the room. They muttered phrases like, "Don't let him hear you sleeping." The camera shifted to reveal a figure standing in the far corner of the hospital room. It was impossibly tall, its head practically scraping the ceiling. Its face was stretched out, blurry, and completely unfinished. Investigators reviewing the case file debated 2 main hypotheses. Was this figure a biological mutation resulting from a failed military sleep experiment, or was it a shared hallucination, forcefully induced in the viewer's brain by low-frequency audio embedded within the static? Tyler hit the mute button on the TV immediately.
But the whispering didn't stop. It continued out loud, right there inside the physical apartment. An audio anomaly projecting independently from the television speakers invalidates the idea that this is a simple, passive recording. The tape functions as an active spatial threat. 5 minutes later, the threat escalated. 3 slow, deliberate knocks echoed through the living room. The sound wasn't coming from the front door or the walls. It was coming from inside the physical television set. The broadcast cut to black. Then a single string of white text slowly appeared on the screen. "He is awake now." Instantly, the apartment suffered a total power failure. Left in total sensory deprivation, the 2 students heard a deep, wet breathing manifest directly beside them in the pitch-black room. Police searched the building and found no sign of a physical intruder in the hallway outside. However, they documented one tangible anomaly inside the apartment. The VHS tape sitting in the VCR was inexplicably hot to the touch. Then they noticed the second major physical anomaly. The handwriting on the label had spontaneously altered itself. The words "sleep experiment" were completely gone. The physical tape now read, "Next subjects." Unexplained thermal energy emissions and the spontaneous morphing of physical materials confirm one thing. The tape acts as an actively radiating entity that interacts with the physical world around it. Tyler packed his bags and fled the campus the very next evening. That left Daniel completely isolated in the apartment. He endured severe sleep deprivation, terrified to close his eyes, while experiencing nightly hallucinations of the tall figure moving incrementally closer inside his bedroom. A week later, Daniel's professor visited the apartment. He discovered Daniel in a complete catatonic state. Blood vessels had burst in both eyes from refusing to blink. He just sat there, silently pointing at a shadow in the empty hallway. When police re-entered the apartment later that night, Daniel was unconscious. The original tape was missing from the machine. In its place, investigators found a fresh recording with a brand new label, "Experiment Continues." The footage on this new cassette showed Daniel sitting alone in his living room at 1:13 a.m., smiling into the camera. Standing right behind him was the entity, but its face was no longer a blurred stretch of static. It was perfectly mimicking Daniel's stolen features. The evidence suggests the tape acts as a parasitic entity. It doesn't just record the host, it systematically mimics their features until the distinction between the viewer and the static disappears. The final case file details a complete breach of containment. 3 days later, the tape impossibly vanished from a highly secure police evidence locker. There were no signs of forced entry. The only trace left behind on the empty shelf was a shaky sticky note reiterating the exact same warning: "Do not play after 1:13 a.m." If you ever encounter similar physical media, adhere to this survival protocol. Never play unlabeled cassette tapes at night. If you hear knocking from your television, mute the audio immediately. And if plain white text suddenly appears on a black screen, you must illuminate your surroundings at all costs.